Okay, so we are back with Batman fighting the anti-Batman, and this comic not only has one of the most ridiculous moments ever in the history of Batman, but the ending's insane. So, in the last video, we picked up with basically Failsafe crushing the entirety of the Bat family. I mean, just like crushing these guys. Even Batman, they never had a chance. But now Superman's on the scene, right? The Man of Steel himself steps up. Here's the funny thing about this. Batman muses to himself and he says, okay, so most likely what Clark is doing right now is analyzing the Failsafe robot using his X-ray vision, but I've most likely built lead into it. Because remember, Batman's own subconscious is the one that built Failsafe for the purpose of it being designed in a way to where Batman himself could not actually deactivate Failsafe. The Failsafe pops up whenever Batman willingly takes a life, and that appears to have been the case. We know it's not necessarily the case, but it looks like it was. And so because Failsafe is designed to take out Batman, the secondary design of Failsafe was to withstand the Justice League. Because obviously, if Failsafe goes after Batman, what's happening is exactly what would happen. The Justice League would step in because they would see it as a rogue robot. And so the result of this is that Batman built lead into Failsafe so that Superman's X-ray vision cannot see through it. It's a pretty genius maneuver. The funny thing about this is that Batman even says, if I've designed Failsafe the way I think I have, then Superman needs to be worried about himself. And he does, because as soon as Failsafe realizes Superman's not going anywhere, he dons a couple of green kryptonite daggers, which is dope. Like, it looks amazing because he immediately takes off and then Superman goes after this guy only for Failsafe to impale him with the kryptonite daggers. Superman's out of commission like that. And it's one of the genius things to know, right? Because the entire basis behind Failsafe is to neutralize the Justice League if necessary. Green kryptonite is the easiest way to take out Superman. Now, it's not the only trick that Failsafe has up his sleeve, and we'll see how he deals with Superman again later on because the way he does it is super unique and amazing. But one of the other things that happens is that like Oliver Queen steps in, right? The Green Arrow. Now, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves, right? What's Green Arrow gonna do? The cool thing here is Martian Manhunter shows up. Now, here's the thing that a lot of non-comic book readers don't know about Martian Manhunter. He's more powerful than Superman. And in fact, in Grant Morrison's JLA from 1998, there's a point in the comic when Superman goes as far as to say, Martian Manhunter is more powerful than he is. He's the most powerful being on Earth. He's on a whole different level. But even he doesn't stand a chance against Failsafe. Because remember, the entire basis behind the design of Failsafe is rooted in Tower of Babel. What was Tower of Babel? That was a story where Ra's al Ghul got a hold of the Batman protocols, a series of files that literally detail how to neutralize the Justice League. So that's exactly what Failsafe is designed to do. Martian Manhunter is taken out in no uncertain terms. Black Canary shows back up again with Oliver Queen. They're both taken out in no uncertain terms. So now it's just Batman and Superman just laying there and is trying to figure out what to do with them. Now, fortunately, Tim Drake Robin shows up. Now, Batman does manage to pull the kryptonite dagger out. He kind of heals up Superman a little bit, or at least patches him up to a degree. But the reality is the green kryptonite's in his system. So they have to get him out of there and get him to the Fortress of Solitude in order for Superman to heal. But the funny thing about this is that when the Quinjet, right, the Justice League jet shows up here, the initial indication or the initial attempt is to get both Batman and Superman to a particular location so they can both recuperate. But Batman comes to this realization that Failsafe is truly after him. Everybody else is collateral damage. The only reason the Justice League are just being taken apart piece by piece is because they're stepping in defense of Batman. But if that wasn't the case, they wouldn't have to worry about anything. Bruce Wayne coming to that realization leads him to tell Tim Drake, take Superman to the Fortress of Solitude so he can recuperate. Everything he needs to be made whole will be there because we need him. I'm getting out of here. Failsafe's after me. I will lead him away. And that's exactly what he does. Now, the cool thing here is that when the Justice League goes back on the attack, Failsafe does not go directly after Batman. Instead, what it does is it goes to Gotham City. Now, in turn, the Justice League responds. This is one of the smartest maneuvers, and I'm really excited to see how you guys feel about this. The Justice League responds, right? But as this is going on, remember, Oracle is Barbara Gordon, Batwoman. She's kind of the eyes and ears, right? She sort of helps to galvanize and organize the team, feed them information, different things like that. And what she realizes is that the entirety of the Justice League fighting Failsafe here is not arbitrary and it's not random. It's done for a very particular purpose. That this is quite literally a kill box. What happens is that because of the nature of this one segment of Gotham, that Failsafe has fire, he has the ability to magnetize Hawkgirl's wings, he can neutralize Black Canary relatively easily, it minimizes collateral damage, but maximizes the ability to overcome the Justice League. And that's it. The Justice League is taken out in like the blink of an eye. There's no one to stand against this guy. That's one of the coolest things about Failsafe. He's the answer to the question, what happens when you have a Batman that has no compassion and is totally unrestricted in terms of what it's willing to do to achieve a goal with maximum resolve? It's nuts, right? It's basically Batman taking out the entirety of the Justice League. And so at that moment, you do have Dick Grayson that tries to step in, but none of it helps. And so with Batman taking off and literally jumping out of the ship, what he does is he goes to the only safe haven he can possibly think of, the only place that Failsafe will not immediately think to look, the oceans. And he arrives in Atlantis in the realm of Aquaman. Now, of course, Aquaman and those guys basically bring him back and they restore him to health. But the biggest issue that you have to contend with now is that Aquaman, at least as part of his stories are going, is not traditionally the king of Atlantis. He's more of just kind of the guy that people look to as more of a guy than anything else. More so than that, in the time that Batman's recovering, what Aquaman says is Gotham City has fallen. The Failsafe now has drones that traveled through the city and look for anybody who's trying to break in order to free those individuals who are still trapped here, right? Different superheroes or whatnot, or to try to find a way to defeat Failsafe itself. More so than that, in order to have eyes and ears everywhere, it's taken over Barbara Gordon with a kind of computerized device. And so now she operates as its eyes and ears, seeing not only everything going on in the city of Gotham, but everything around the world. And literally he says, the Failsafe robot is still hunting you. It hunts you endlessly. It keeps going on tirelessly. You're basically believed to be dead by the remaining superhero community, but until the Failsafe robot destroys you, it will continue to hunt you seemingly forever. And so what he says is, at the end of the day, the Failsafe robot taking over Gotham kind of seems to be its main goal. And that's when Batman comes to the realization that's really what the Failsafe robot's doing. Targeting Gotham City, because that's Batman's home. Targeting Gotham and then literally turning Gotham into just kind of a cesspool, right? Where people just commit crimes left and right, allowing the city to succumb to its most base and destructive desires. Batman cannot stay away for long because he loves the city so much, he will inevitably try to come back. And that's what Failsafe is banking on. It's one of the smartest maneuvers, right? Like, if you can't find the person you're trying to kill, then go after the things they care about and make them come to you. It's one of the most genius military strategies that you could really even think of. And so in the face of all of this, there's a few different things that we learn, right? When Failsafe is asking Barbara Gordon for a kind of update on what's going on, Barbara Gordon says 78% of metahumans with a connection to Batman have attempted breaching Gotham and have been rebuffed or captured. 17% of the remaining beings are currently caught in unrelated skirmishes. And that's when Failsafe starts to realize there's a member of the Justice League who is missing. No one's heard anything from Aquaman. He hasn't responded, he hasn't said anything, he's dead silent. And that's when it comes to the realization Batman has to be with Aquaman. Batman has to be down there. And so Failsafe in turn responds, travels down to Atlantis, manages to capture Aquaman, even like punching a hole through him to the point where it gets to his heart, and then threatens to kill Aquaman in front of all of his leaders, or at least all of his generals and whatnot. And in turn, one of them basically calls Aquaman out and just says like, Batman's over there, right? Literally it is rat Batman out. Now, a lot of it seems due more to disloyalty than anything else. And Orm's just kind of the guy who does that, right? You know, like he's the dick of like the Aquaman mythos, right? Like he's the snitch, right? Snitches get stitches. So it's one of those things where like once this happens, Batman, in musing to himself, knew it was only a matter of time before Failsafe figured out where he was. And when he got down there, he would, by any means necessary, try to figure out Batman's location, even taking Aquaman hostage and threatening to kill him in front of all the Atlanteans. And so when this happens, once Failsafe gets to where Batman is supposed to be, Batman's gone, and he's basically teleported to the Justice League headquarters on the moon. Now, the funny thing about this is that he's basically planned for this, because, you know, it's Batman, he always plans. But I love the way that Chip Zdarsky plays this out, right? Yes, Batman's a planner and a schemer, but the bigger thing here is that Failsafe knows everything Batman's going to do. So he's going to have to plan for the guy that plans for everything that he plans for. It's nuts. It's kind of wild. And so realizing that Failsafe's armor is basically basically impervious, right? It was designed to be that way, and even his innards are impervious to like just conventional weapons. He ends up grabbing a new Genesis gun, which is powerful enough to punch a small hole in Failsafe's armor, but not enough to actually blow his body apart. But he wasn't really even planning on that, right? He simply had a means, like he was achieving a particular goal. He's playing the long game here. And so in this fight between the two, it's basically cat and mouse. It's Batman jumping from one part of the watchtower to the next, trying to outmaneuver Failsafe, while Failsafe is basically taking out every single trap that Batman sets up until Batman gets to the teleporter. And when Failsafe had expected this, what it didn't expect was for Batman to reverse the teleporter. And instead of it teleporting Batman away, it teleports Failsafe back to Earth. Now, Failsafe was able to get to the watchtower just by virtue of using a vessel in the first place, but with no conventional means of interstellar flight, meaning no way to fly to the moon, the Failsafe is basically trapped on Earth. But the crazy thing here is that Batman is also trapped in the watchtower, because with the watchtower basically being blown to pieces now, he starts calling for these like emergency rafts, right? Something that can get him back to Earth, but they're all basically destroyed. He's stranded out there, floating through space with nothing but an oxygen mask that's running out of air, floating towards Earth. Now, this is when you get to the most Batman moment ever in the history of DC Comics. It's ridiculous. I mean, it's ridiculous, but amazing at the same time, right? It's one of those things, right? Because Batman always survives. So what he ends up doing here, as he makes his way, he gets back to some remnant of the vessel and finds that like there's an oxygen tank there, right? So not too weird. That's kind of a normal thing, right? Reserve oxygen tanks and so on, right? So this thing gives him about 12 hours and 15 minutes of oxygen. Then what he does is he hooks the tank up to like just a piece of metal, right? Just a piece of this vessel, and then starts floating back to Earth. But what he says is that as he moves towards Earth, he'll be caught in the planet's gravitational pull, right? That if he continues at this speed, he's just gonna be pancaked, pulverized by the Earth. Because remember, as the Joker taught us in Batman the Animated Series, it's not the fall that kills you, it's the sudden stop. And so because of this, Batman comes up with this ridiculous scheme of basically using this device to effectively speed up and slow down, right? So like slow his momentum so he can fall to Earth and he can hit the ground and survive, which he does. It's the most ridiculous thing that I think I've ever seen in a Batman comic, and I love it. I absolutely love it. Right? Like, this, like, even for a Batman comic, it's just outrageous, but it's awesome. It's amazing. So he makes it to Earth and then just gets up. He suffers no ill effects from landing, from like literally falling from the moon to Earth. He just gets up. Not only that, he arrived where he wanted to be, at the Fortress of Solitude. And so when that happens, he basically makes his way in right when Superman starts to wake up. He's not really 100%, but he's strong enough to where he can kind of hold his own to a degree. And that's when Batman tells him, okay, Failsafe is going to be on his way here. He'll be picking up on the fact that I fell from the moon and survived, and he'll surmise where I landed, and then he'll make his way here, he'll know exactly where I'm going, and he will show up on the doorstep of the Fortress of Solitude. So he literally tells Superman, I need you to buy me some time. Now, the funny thing about this is Superman goes into this with like battle armor and everything, expecting like some kind of a long drawn out fight, even preparing for the kryptonite daggers that Failsafe has. But Failsafe basically tells him, I know things about you that you don't even know about yourself. For example, Kryptonians, much like humans, have pressure points. When he presses one of them, Superman's heat vision activates without him wanting to, and it reflects off the glass in his visor and hits him in the face and takes Superman out. It's amazing! Like, I've never seen that happen before. And I was like, dude, that's dope! Like, making Superman use his own powers against his will, it's genius writing. But the other part of this is that Batman tells Tim Drake, he tells Robin, I punched a hole in Failsafe's armor. The reality here is that no conventional weapon that we have on Earth, even something like a nuclear device, would be enough to take this guy out. He was designed to be that way. But what I did do was punch a hole small enough that we can actually put in a nanotech virus. Because if we just put a random virus in his body, it would immediately destroy destroy it, right? It would immediately fight it off because I would have calculated for that, I would have prepared for that. Instead, what we have to do is introduce a virus that will gradually change its programming and gradually modify it. But the question that Tim Drake has is, but what if it doesn't work? Because this is the last stand at the Alamo, Batman. There is nobody else, right? So if this doesn't work, then we're both done with all our living. But Batman, ever the planner, tells Tim Drake, don't worry, I have a backup plan, because I'm Batman. After all, Tim Drake, it is my comic book. So the thing that happens here is Batman, kind of being serious here. Batman tells him, like, Failsafe was designed to fight me. He was not designed to fight Batman and Robin. Now, they both go into this knowing there's no way they can overcome Failsafe in a traditional sense with the two of them just fighting. They know that, right? It's really more of a moral boost, but it's also just a great tribute, right? Watching like Batman and Robin racing off into death. But the cool thing here is that in this fight that they have, Batman kind of comments and says, this guy is not like some thug or some ex-felon. This is me, an unrestrained version of me. So we cannot fight this guy in the traditional sense. It's all designed to be a distraction. And that's exactly what Batman does. In this moment, he plunges the virus into Failsafe, but it's not enough to take him out. It's not enough to take Failsafe out. They have, by all standards of measurement, failed. The programming doesn't quite work, right? The programming looks like it's trying to work, but in the time when it takes for this programming to function, literally Failsafe says, eliminate Batman. And that's it. It didn't work at all. And so Failsafe fires off a gun at Batman, and then seemingly Batman dies on the spot, right? Literally incinerated by Failsafe. Now, here's the thing. I'm on the fence as to whether or not I want to tell you guys what happened next. Because you know what? Let's do it. Let's do it. I don't want to leave you guys hanging. I don't want to leave you guys hanging. So what this looks like here, we don't get a definitive answer here, but what it looks like here, this gun uses the Omega Sanction of Darkseid. And the reason why is because if you guys remember from Final Crisis, Batman was hit with Darkseid's Omega Sanction, which normally would eradicate somebody. But because it's a Batman comic, he ends up getting teleported through time. This seems to be similar, because when it looks like Batman is completely and totally destroyed, instead, it's seemingly he's just teleported somewhere else. We don't know where he is. We have no idea what happens or if he even remembers who he is. We have no idea what's going on, but we'll find out when we cover more of the Batman comics. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this to an end. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all later. Peace.